Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. We are social creatures. We crave connection. We're all about relationships. Sometimes those relationships are fantastic. Sometimes they kind of disconnect. We're going to talk about those types of relationships, where the disconnect is, and how she helps make that connection once again. She's an amazing psychologist, also an author of some really fantastic books. I call them your life manuals. And she's back with us. Dr. Ann Creekmore is on the program. How are you today?
Great, Steve. How are you?
Really good, really good. And this is something that we've gotten together in the past quite a number of times. We've never really dug into, loosely put here, couples therapy, working with couples on fortifying their relationship. I want to work it from the reverse. Why do you think that relationships dissolve? You have a couple, everything was great, they're together a number of years. I guess it's a cliche, they start growing apart. Is it because they're growing on their own, but at a different rate? Like what is actually going on there when a relationship starts dissolving?
Well, I mean, it could be a number of things. It could be that they, as you said, they're kind of growing apart. And instead of attending to the relationship, and because it's kind of like an entity to itself, you have to kind of feed and build and enhance your relationship. And if you get so busy with other things, like you're working and you've got to take care of your children and all the other stuff of life, your finances, and you don't put the energy into feeding the relationship and nourishing the relationship, then people may hold bottle up feelings. They're not really happy, and they don't express it, or they don't work it out, or somebody's just not willing to go to therapy or something, so that they don't ever attend to it. Then it just continues to kind of fall apart. Then eventually, doesn't have to, if you give it that attention
Interestingly,
and care.
We talk about that care and attention to the relationship, but isn't it true that sometimes somebody is so wrapped up in the other person, codependent, if you will? Maybe I don't know if that's the best description, but they feel if they can't live their life without having this person in their life. But what's really going on here is they haven't become an individual in themselves, and they're dependent on the other person. Does that often take a relationship down?
I agree with you. It's like people need to be, the relationship is really the icing on the cake. I mean, it's everyone's job individually to take care of making themselves happy, being a whole fulfilled person, taking care of themselves, mind, body, spirit, if you will, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, responsibly, socially, taking that time, maybe a couple hours a day, if you can, if you can't, at least one where you're in a well-rounded way, enhancing yourself and making yourself happy. It's not like you can expect somebody else to be making you happy. And so then if you have these two people that are whole, fulfilled people, and they come together, then, they can weather when the other person's down, and they can't really meet their needs at that moment, because they're meeting their own needs and they're feeling kind of content, positive in their lives. They're there for themselves. And then when the person is available, then they can enhance and be there for each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's been said that you can't love others unless you truly love yourself. Is that absolutely true?
Absolutely. And I mean, even if you are with someone who is loving to you, if you're down on yourself, you have negative thoughts or low self-esteem or triggers, unresolved emotional wounds from the past, you will see them in the other person, or you will somehow activate them in the other person, where you won't even be able to receive the love that's there for you. And in fact, there's a therapy called imago therapy, couples therapy, where the therapy is to look at your past, your relationship, say, with your parents, and what wounds maybe you have, and or wounds that have occurred in your life, traumas or losses, somewhere along the way, and what that kind of taught you, where you're coming from, and how you take what other people say, and how you think that other people are, the assumptions maybe make, your defaults, responses, or your triggers that come up and then interfere with the relationship. So it's really important to do your own self-discovery, some kind of like therapy or support group, or just personal growth group, men's group, things that help you work on your inner self, so you're clear, you're not a projector of your own stuff onto the relationship.
So let's say you have a couple sitting before you, and we can decide whatever the challenge is. That's up to you. How would you work with them? Whether it's the 5 love languages, you'd start there. Just give us a kind of the lay. Anybody's never gone to couples counseling, what does that look like?
Well, couples counseling probably is different for different therapists. I mean, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. We're really, doctoral level, where you learn to do evaluations and testing. And I do that with every client that comes in. So even if they're a couple, they're going to get this nice fat little packet of things to fill out about themselves. So I've got their whole basic life history, medical, emotional, physical, spiritual, if you will. I mean, are you in a church, or your hobbies, or what disorders you've had physically or emotionally? How about your parents? What your traumas are? So on. It's questionnaires and so on. So I basically start myself the same way I would start with an individual, but they're both there filling out their own packets, their questionnaires, and sharing their presenting complaints, their goals, their symptoms that they personally have, so that when I am working with a couple, I kind of have an idea if they have any actual diagnoses themselves individually that could be impacting on the relationship, or that they might need to get some help with in order to be able to be fully functioning partner in a relationship. And so that's where I would start. But then I would, of course, ask them, if they were committed to working on the relationship. Because if one person actually is kind of out the door, maybe like we talked about at the beginning, where somebody, they may be not having time to attend, and they finally realize that, well, I'm not, this isn't going to work for me. And they've grieved it themselves even for a while. A lot of times women won't really get their across to their men, and the men are surprised. They come into therapy and the woman has already made the decision, the relationship's over, that they couldn't get their needs met. And so they're in not a non-committal, stance in the therapy. And if one person isn't either party isn't committed to the relationship and we're making it work and coming to therapy, doing the work, that can't work. So one of the first steps you got to find out is, do you want to make this relationship work? And are you going to commit to doing that? And if one isn't, it's kind of like turning it into a disengagement, where it's more like, how do you disengage amicably versus we're working on the relationship. But hopefully it's not that, and they've come in time and not, that they are going to work. But that's one thing you want to discover at the beginning is that what's their goals? What would they like to see? What would look, out picture, we could do it for them to make this relationship work. And then I do, the extra things like you mentioned, the 5 love languages, have them do that on their own, to kind of get a feel for if there's discrepancies in what makes one person feel love compared to the other. And they're trying to show the love, but it's not coming across because their the other's love language is different. And maybe it doesn't matter to the other one. And so they don't do it. If physical touch doesn't matter to someone, they're not going to bother to do that to the person they're not thinking is love. But if gifts are what they think makes them feel loved, then they're giving all these gifts, but no physical affection. And the other person feels like, well, they don't love me. So it's good. So that's another little facet beside the usual psychological intake evaluation. That I'd get them to do the love languages, start to understand themselves and each other from that perspective as well. First session two. Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, yes, this is the reason. You have a couple, they have challenges. Are those challenges really directly connected to what we've talked about before, their childhood? Call them traumas, big or small, that pilot them as an adult. Now they're navigating a relationship, partnership, if you will. Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's always something related to their past, why they react a certain way, what's going on there. Or would you put it at, well, it can be, but so I make it a 7. Where do you feel, Ann?
That's a good question. Nobody's asked me that before. I mean, the first thing I got was like a 6, but then 7 could be right depending on the person, because sometimes some of it is related to what they is. A lot of it is could be related to, I think you're suggesting maybe to past losses or traumas affecting them.
Yeah.
And so the triggers, and they're bringing it into the relationship, and they're kind of not seeing, not being able to react, or they have these maladaptive learnings. They learned, their father was a certain way and lost their temper. And so they learn to lose their temper or identified and don't, say they might have not know how to communicate properly. In a healthy way to resolve conflict. So that could still be considered like something from their past.
Sure.
It's kind of like a way to learn to relate. So I'd say, like you were saying, 6 or 7. Sometimes people have certain disorders that just affect things. And then, of course, that could relate to their past. They may have bipolar that they kind of inherited, genetically. One of their parents had it and they've got that. And that's, of course, going to affect how
and we'll
they
factor that is something from their past, if you want to call it that, but we'll put that to the side because it's more of a genetics. And the more and more I see, genetics play less and less of a role than we all thought, but it's still.
Right.
I mean, I know families that where anxiety, it's in the family. Mom has it.
Right.
Kids have it. But let's say mom has it, and each of the children have it. They're now adults. Dad never had any issues whatsoever, at least not identified. That can be part of it. Now, you have that couple in front of you, and they've got a challenge or few, and we feel that maybe one of them it's coming from a lot of the challenges from their past, and it hasn't really been identified yet. Is it also reasonable to think that the way the other half of the relationship is reacting to their challenge, it's part of their challenge as well? You follow? So they both have things from their past that is making this something bigger to rectify.
Absolutely. And in fact, that brings me back to what I was talking about. I think it's Harville Hendricks, his wife, they were therapists, and they had divorced previously, and they didn't want to go through a divorce when they got together. So they developed Imago Therapy. Getting the Love You Want is the book. It's a good one. And the idea is that actually not only do people get together for the right reasons, I guess you'd call it, and this is a right reason too, though, but because they have that romantic connection, they feel that best friend devotion, or they have that sharing of the thought world, and their life philosophy. These are connections that are important, but they also are connected on an unconscious wound, unresolved wound. Like they both will have experienced a similar wound in their past, but taken an opposite stance often. So they can polarize each other because they have a different way of handling it. When ideally, it'd be good to come to the happy medium, maybe learn from each other, but they don't even know that they're got this wound and that's part of the attraction person.
Ooh, let's look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the attraction?
Yeah, an unconscious desire to heal this wound. But until you get deep and, you're in therapy or in some sort of, personal growth kinds of introspections, or your journalings or your meditations or whatever you do, you probably don't have any idea that, that that's part of the issue, that you both have been through this and you found your way, your coping strategy, but they're kind of opposite. And then they say opposites attract, right? They don't mean it that way usually, but that is the way on the deep psychological level. That they have found a different way of handling, and then they may polarize each other because they both handle, say, grief one way, that they both experience loss, and one is handling it one way and one is handling it the other way. And there's no real awareness that they're both trying to heal this wound together.
Wow.
And but in opposite direct ways. Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to think that people just grow apart? Is that is for challenges in relationships, they're just growing at a different rate? What's going on there?
Right. I mean, you could say that maybe, some people, they come into your life for for a purpose, and they serve that purpose, and that's where you were in your life at that time. But maybe, things, when you change or you're going in a different one, maybe that person isn't the best person to continue to grow with, that they don't want to grow, for example, in that direction. I mean, it should be that your partner should always support your growth in general. I mean, the whole idea is to have a best friend that really cares about you, accepts you, and wants the best, and wants you to be your authentic self, and just grow and be fulfilled. I mean, so you think ideally, that that relationship could last if that person had that unconditional love for you. And, even though maybe you would change, doesn't mean that you wouldn't be there for that person unconditionally, that they, for their happiness and growth. But not everybody, has that. And so then maybe sometimes if it is toxic and a person isn't there for you, we may need to look at, coming to therapy, and don't have regrets. Talk about it, work it out, and say, this is what I'm needing, I'm not getting, and see if you can get the relationship there or the person to come to that.
Oftentimes when you work with a couple together, then as we said, individually, uh, is there some homework involved? Do you send them off saying, all right, you guys, we talked about five love languages. That's something that they need to take the test, the quiz. Any other things that you sometimes assign, if you will?
Uh, well, I mean, the book that I have, I do use that a lot. I mean, I have
Hmm.
several books, but the Love Yourself, Love Your Life book is kind of a workbook that includes all the different I'll say all, but a lot of the different type most effective therapies, and has it's like a toolbox, of skill sets. Each chapter is a different therapy focus. First one, the self-fulfilling prophecy. How do you change your thoughts to be positive so that you can encourage yourself and move into a positive direction, create positive outcomes, manifest? And for example, and wherever the issues are, I might direct them to read something out of the book. They don't have to get the book. A lot of people like, want that. But or they can borrow it, or read it there. But sometimes I'll give exercises out of the book on whatever the topic may be, that seems to be a kind of a barrier to their love, to their relationship. And one is, for example, heal emotional wounds of the past. That chapter, psychodynamic, would be in like, well, what is actually getting triggered when you're having this argument? Can you use that to go inside and associate and see what's deeper inside yourself that is being triggered, that may be being brought, it just isn't really what you're arguing about. It's like it's bringing up pain from your past, and how do we heal that? So yeah, lots of exercises from the book for one, or different types of therapy would be things. Journaling is really good to
Mm.
do. to enhance your therapy and your growth. Yeah,
I'll
those
be
are just a
honest with
couple
you.
examples.
I journal just because it's great. It's like having a friend to talk to. You put your thoughts out there, good and bad. I haven't done it in a while, and have a gratitude journal, and just been busy. And every day I'm like, I'm gonna write that. I'm gonna write, and I don't get to it. To
Mhm.
illustrate your point, I feel a void. It's a weird feeling that I feel like I'm missing out. I like there's a I need to do this. And even last night, I got home a little late. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna write in a gratitude journal. Ah, I'll do that in the morning when I wake up. Well, I was too busy, blah, 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 left. And um, it is impactful. I feel a little off
Yeah,
because I haven't done it.
right. Right. I think that's so important. I mean, our thoughts are key to our empowerment in all aspects of our lives, and
Mm.
catching those negative thoughts, putting the positive, the gratitude in, and coming from that place of good is so important. I do, that I think that's really crucial with couples, just because therapy, the initial factors, the main factors are that sense of hope and expectancy to generate that, and to generate that in yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's super. Yeah.
Appreciate the view of all of us today. I think many of us want our relationships to be better and don't realize what couples therapy looks like. A lot of times, one party is like, I'm not going to therapy, but
Right.
it's not about just for the couple. You're doing it for yourself to make you a better person, i.e., even better within your relationship. Best way to find you, and how do we do that?
Yes, you can go to. I have several websites that you can go to, but the easiest way to kind of find them is just to go to Psychology Today. That's a directory for psychologists, and just look me up, Ann Creekmore, Ann with the E, silent E, Creekmore, and then I'll have my links right there, and you can click it and get in to see what I do, and my phone number and emails and so on, how to
Sure.
contact. Yeah.
And you can do it virtually. So
Yes,
anybody connecting
absolutely.
anywhere, even if the couple is in different places, maybe it's a long distance relationship. We don't
Absolutely.
know. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can do it. I find doing it that way. I mean, I work on communication skills. That's, of course, a big one. That's the healing, to how to communicate healthfully. And you can do that on Zoom, or you can do that in person. I mean, so
Yep.
it works fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also your books, which you referred to. I love them. They really are easy to read. That's my biggest fear. Picking up one of these books and like, oh my gosh. No, it's written in such a lovingly easy to understand way. And a lot of them have anecdotes or poems at the very beginning to kind of like set the stage. Really good stuff. And appreciate you. Yeah, as always, thanks for being here and thanks for shining the spotlight on couples therapy and more. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks. We'll talk soon. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.